Rome didn't build an empire on courage alone. It built it on debt. We like to imagine the Roman legions as unstoppable warriors fueled by honor and discipline. But behind every polished helmet and sharpened gladius was a supply chain of staggering complexity and cost. Thousands of men needed food, weapons, roads, and pay. Horses needed feed. Siege weapons needed timber and labor. And all of it required money, a lot of it. So how did Rome finance centuries of conquest? And why does it still matter today? Because the deeper you look into the Roman war machine, the clearer the pattern becomes. War wasn't just fought on the battlefield. It was baked into the financial system itself. And once that system was in motion, it couldn't stop. Expansion wasn't choice. It was an economic necessity. Sound familiar? Let's go back. In the early Republic, Rome's military was a citizen army. If you owned land, you could be drafted. Soldiers brought their own gear and expected to return to their farms after the campaign. But as Rome expanded, wars became longer, tougher, and much farther from home. The old model cracked. You couldn't just grab a spear and leave for a year anymore. You needed professional soldiers. That's when Rome began to centralize military financing. The state paid modest stipends to its troops, not much, but enough to keep loyalty steady. Then came the real shift. Conquest itself became a business model. Every new province meant fresh taxes, new slaves, new tribute, new mines. It became a loop where funded more war. But here's where it becomes interesting and dangerous. Rome didn't rely only on taxes. It relied heavily on borrowing. During long or expensive wars, like the Punic Wars, the Republic took huge public loans from the wealthy elite, especially the equites, Rome's rising financial class. These weren't patriotic gestures. They were investments. And investors wanted returns. Interest payments taxed farming rights, control over trade, and access to resources in conquered lands. War became a business, and the more profitable it was, the more wars Rome waged. Over time, this militarized economy reshaped everything. Generals gained political power through promises of spoils. Senators became shareholders in conflict. Private contractors, the publicani, handled logistics, taxes, and supplies, skimming fortunes along the way. It was military-industrial capitalism, centuries before the term existed. And the costs? They grew. To pay troops and creditors, Rome needed constant revenue. When conquest slowed or rebellions drained the treasury, the state turned to an ancient trick, debasing the currency. Under Emperor Nero, the silver in the denarius began shrinking. Over the next 2 centuries, emperors kept diluting it until the coin became little more than a symbol. Inflation rose. Trust fell. By the 3rd century, Rome's currency system was unraveling. Meanwhile, the rich got richer. Senators and equites protected their wealth in land, slaves, and foreign holdings. The poor paid taxes and weakened currency, while the elite secured exemptions and advantages. Public services collapsed. Corruption soared. The financial weight of endless wars fell on the lower classes through inflation, forced labor, and military drafts. This wasn't just a military collapse. It was a monetary one. Now pause and look around today. Governments running huge deficits. Wars paid for with borrowed money. Central banks printing more currency to fill the gaps. A financial class profiting from defense contracts, crises, and instability. And an economy that must keep expanding militarily, monetarily, or through markets just to stay afloat. It's not an exact parallel, but the resemblance is uncomfortable. Rome teaches us that an economy built on endless expansion eventually hits a wall. You run out of territory, resources, or adversaries. And when expansion stops, the system turns inward. The debt stays. The expectations stay. But the revenue vanishes. That's when the state squeezes its own citizens. Rome raised taxes, debased currency, tightened control, distracted the public with entertainment, while the elite fortified their estates. Today, we don't call it tribute. We call it taxation, monetary policy, or quantitative easing. But the mechanics are similar. Money gets printed. Governments outspend their income. The wealthy buy assets. The poor buy necessities with shrinking paychecks. Modern wars are still funded through debt. The war in Afghanistan cost trillions. most of it borrowed. And just like in Rome, someone earns interest, someone wins the contracts, and someone else pays inflation and declining services. You already know who pays. And once debt becomes normal, you don't need a crisis to print money. You just need to avoid collapse. The exceptional becomes the everyday. And the longer it lasts, the more you pretend it's fine, until it isn't. That's why history matters. These aren't old stories. They're warnings. Rome outsourced too much power to private finance, relied on expansion to survive, hollowed out its currency, and overburdened its people. Not out of malice, but because its system had no off switch. Today, we live in a different kind of empire, digital, global, powered by capital instead of legions. But the rules haven't changed. Money follows power. War remains profitable. Inflation punishes the vulnerable. And illusions last until they don't. So what can you do? Start by recognizing the pattern. Most people don't. Most think inflation is random. Taxes are simple necessities. Debt is harmless. And growth can be infinite. But the Stoics had a word for that. Delusion. You can't exit the system. But you can understand it. You can stop walking blind. You can build resilience. Not just financial, but mental. Study financial history. Not just personal finance. Watch for pressure points. Not just headlines. Ask who profits when you stay confused. Because you weren't supposed to know this. You weren't supposed to ask how Rome paid for its wars, or how modern states do it today. You were meant to focus on the show, not the machinery behind it. But now you know. And once you know, you can't unsee it. Financial education isn't just about budgeting or investing. It's about understanding power, systems, and the illusion of stability. So the next time you hear about a new conflict, a new stimulus, a new crisis, don't just react. Follow the money. Ask who lends, who earns, and who ultimately pays. Because if history teaches us anything, it's this. Empires don't fall when the enemy breaches the gate. They fall when the math stops working, and no one dares to fix it.